This week's Parsha, the Torah concludes the description of the items to be constructed for the Mishkan. And in this week's Parsha, we have the kiyor, which was a type of a washing station. It was made out of bronze. Somehow you fill it with water, and then the Kohanim were obligated every morning before the beginning of the service in the temple or in the Mishkan to wash their hands and feet from that kiyor. The Kohanim did not wear shoes. And the Gemara teaches us that the hands and the feet were washed simultaneously. In other words, the Kohen put his hand on his foot and then the water fell on both simultaneously. So what's the reason for this? You have to realize that in the ancient world, not everybody took a bath or a shower every week. And in fact, that lasted pretty much into the past century, where in the Middle Ages, for instance, there were people who never took a bath in their life. The idea of cleanliness, of personal hygiene, did not exist in society. Even the Roman bathhouses were really for other purposes than taking a bath, even though they did have pools of water. So what was the purpose here? So the Mefarshim say that this is the origin of our concept of nikiyut, of cleanliness. Personal cleanliness, mental cleanliness, societal cleanliness. The Torah itself emphasizes it. It says, "V'yisem nikiyim Hashem u'miyisrael." You should be clean. Clean means that it shouldn't be stained by it. So, for instance, in the famous brisa of Rav Pinchas ben Yoyer, where he lists all of the levels in which a person has to ascend in order to obtain Ruach HaKodesh, and the Mesilas Yesharim of Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto is based on that brisa. So Nikiyus is one of them. Without Nikiyus, you can't get to Ruach HaKodesh. And not only that, it brings to Zehirus, and it brings to Zrizus, it brings to all sorts of other personality traits which are positive, but first there has to be nikiyus. So there are different interpretations naturally as to what the item of washing was, and we have it today. I mean, we have in the morning we have the Tilat Yadayim. And the Kohanim have Netilat Yadayim before they bless us. We have Netilat Yadayim before we eat bread. We have Netilat Yadayim to a different extent, but it's the same idea when we leave the bathroom. The Jewish people are constantly washing their hands. I'm not talking about purification in the mikveh, which is also an obligation. So what did it represent? So there are, in the Shulchan Aruch, there are two explanations, for instance, for Netilat Yadayim in the morning. One is based on they're both based on a Gemara, by the way. One is based on the idea that Yadayim Shalodom Askoni Yoteim. When we sleep at night, our hands go all over. We're not aware where they touch. And therefore, there's always a very good chance that we may have defiled ourselves in one way or another. So therefore, that's why the first thing when we get up in the morning, in Yiddish they used to call it Negelwasser, because they wash the nails, they wash the front part of the finger. But so this interpretation is that it's a simple matter of cleanliness, because Yadayim Shalodam Askoni Yoteim, and our hands go all over, and therefore we have to, in the morning, we have to wash off whatever happened at night. There's a second reason that the Meforshim bring, it was brought also in La Halacha, and that is a more mystical reason, a more spiritual reason. That when a person sleeps, there is a ruach tuma that pervades the person's, and that therefore the netilat yadayim, ruach ra it's called, a negative type of atmosphere that pervades the person. And that when we wash in the morning, we, so to speak, wash away that ruach ra. What's the idea of the ruach ra? So that has to do with the Talmud's insight into sleep. What is sleep? What happens to us? So it seems that the Chachomim held that it was a type of suspended animation. The person is, thank God, alive, but he's not there. The person isn't there. And that's the Ruach Ra, that's the atmosphere that pervades us, because the person is not there. It is the Gemara calls it a miniature death. So that, Baruch Hashem, we get up in the morning, and we say, Modeh ani lefanecha, shechzarta bi nishmosi, but that phrase itself suggests that the neshama was not there. Now when I have awakened, you have returned the neshama to me. But otherwise it was not there, it was not present. And because of that state of near death, we wash our hands. And that's why the custom is that if we're Rachmana litzlan, the Levayan, the Dogadacht, so then we wash our hands afterwards, if we were in the same atmosphere as the mace. And death is not seen as, it is seen as a tumor, as something that defiles us. It's not life. It's not, doesn't have the positive attributes of life. And therefore, that's the Netilas Yadayim. Now, the Gemara also spoke about something called Mayim Achronim, which is washing our hands, our fingers, after the meal. So there are a few things to, first of all, in the ancient world, they didn't have silverware. They ate with their hands, something which many people still do. And in the time of the Talmud and earlier, the salt that was used is not what our table salt is, but it was a much more powerful salt. It was called melach zdomis. I think what they meant is that it's salt that's taken from the Dead Sea, from Zdom, which is a very, very powerful salt. It's not our table salt at all. And therefore the Gemara says we were afraid that people would dip their fingers into the salt and then somehow rub it on their eyes. And if the salt got in the eye, then it could do serious damage. So it was a question of sakona. And washing mayim achronim was to prevent the sakona. By washing off your fingers, your hand, so then the salt would be washed away, and that would not be the problem, right? However, there's a second story in the Gemara in Yoma. There's a story about someone who committed a crime, and he was convicted and found guilty of a crime because of the fact that he didn't wipe off his mouth, and therefore the evidence of the crime was still on him, and he was executed. So the Gemara says, so from there we have the custom to wash our hands, to mayim achronim, and to wipe our mouth. From that Gemara, it's mashma that wiping on the mouth is the main thing. From the other Gemara, it's mashma that the washing of the fingers is the main thing because of the salt that's involved. So the Achronim already discussed that Bizman Hazeh, in our times, we don't have melech zdomis anymore. In America, we had Morton salt. Here, whatever you have, right? Yeah, but the salt is table salt. And even the kosher salt that, so to speak, was used to kasher, which today we don't even see anymore, was not of the intensity. And this is discussed in the Hilchos Melicha in Yeridea, what salt to use, how to get a salt that really will draw blood, will absorb the blood from the meat, etc. So they said, we don't have it anymore. We don't have to do mayim achronim. It's a remarkable jump, because usually even when the reason goes away, the activity remains. But for instance, in many kehilas, in Kehilas Ashkenaz, for instance, or in Germany, they never washed mayim achronim, because in Germany they didn't have salt, melech zdomis, and therefore that was not their custom, and it's not mentioned in the German books of halacha, Yosef Homitz, etc. However, in Eastern Europe, Lithuania also, it was very sparingly used, if at all. And in Lithuania, they had a strange custom that they only did it on Shabbat. Maybe because only on Shabbat they had something good to eat, and didn't have to worry in the middle of the week of getting. But in the Hasidic world and in the Sephardic world, it was always observed as mayim achronim. And not only that, after the Mayim Achronim, you can't speak. You have to go right to the benching. And then the shaila is whether you can say Shir HaMalos afterwards. Many you're supposed to say the Shir HaMalos first, and then wash. It's a whole chapter in halacha regarding it. So what we gather from it is that somehow this is all part of what Moshe was told. Sisa kiyor, v'chanu nechoshes, v'nasata shama moim, v'rochatzu aru nevona v'es yedeim v'es ragleim. That's the beginning of it. And that has remained with us until today. The idea of nikiyus, of personal hygiene, and certainly of hygiene of the mind and the body and the spirit and the behavior. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash, Omer Ratzak HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Zakat Yisrael, V'tilcha Pibul Ha'Torah Mitzvot Shenemar, V'mayim Peitzim Hamsik Koyam